Yes. The first question is from Madam Regina. She asks, I'd like to guide my son to better manage his time and study routines. I'm currently doing it on his behalf, she says, and how do I go about it? Thank you, Madam Regina. That's a wonderful question. First of all, well done. You've started your child on the right footing. You've set up routines for him to follow. And really, parents, when they're young, it is important that we set up routines. It doesn't happen automatically. And it's lovely that if he is following it, the next part of your child's learning is to manage his time and routines by himself. So, and that's your question. So, my advice would be for younger kids, if the child does not know how to read time or words, you can create a picture timetable. You can color code the activities. You can include a timer, as they may not be able to assess how long 20 minutes or 1 hour is. Parents, you can also go through the activities with them until the child is familiar with the routines and they know what to do. Now, as your child gets older, you may want to use the school's timetable as a model for them. Let them draft the timetable and go through it. It's important that they have a sense of autonomy, a sense of ownership as they draft this timetable, but we must go through it. What our role in this timetable that they've drafted is to help them adhere to it, also ensure that they're monitoring it. As they adhere it, we should be monitoring it. At the same time, at the outset, let's establish consequences. If he doesn't follow, it's important that he establishes the consequences with you so that you can have a win-win situation if he does not adhere to the timetable he has set. You will find, not sure, Angelia, if you agree with me, when children establish consequences, they're actually more strict with themselves, much more than us. So, as I end off this particular part of my answer, I would say, in reality, the chances are the child may not follow it all the time. We will have to exercise parental perseverance. What do you say, Angelia?
Yeah, definitely, Madam. I think one of the tips that I found helpful in establishing routines, because there are quite a number of tasks within a routine. And what I found helpful is for young children, we start to help the children chunk tasks together. So instead of having to remember 5 tasks, okay, to actually slowly chunk the tasks together. So after dinner, okay, you spend a bit of time either reading or playing, and then the next thing that you do, okay, you can take a bath before you do your work, okay, and we start with this very consistent routine, and then you start asking the child, so what should you do next? So you start chunking it so that the routine becomes automatic. So this is really one way that I thought was very helpful for her to establish the routine. And the routine is also something like a bedtime routine that we used to do for children when they were younger. It's just that now the tasks are different. Yeah, so yeah, just follow that consistent routine and get the children to think about do they do next so that it becomes automatic. Yeah, and consequences is quite interesting because today my child was just trying to tell me, my P3 girl was trying to say that there were some kids who didn't do homework, and the teacher was really quite unhappy about it. Then I said, oh, so did you do your work? She said, yeah, of course. And she said, I've already written it on my homework diary, and I make sure that I read everything in there. And even if I don't write in there, I know you are going to find out. Yeah, so it's all these little routines that they have picked up that will help them, become independent. So at this point at P3, I no longer check on her homework diary. I used to when she was in P1. So she knows, even if she doesn't tell me that she has homework, I will check her homework diary, although I don't now. But you can see that it has become an automatic kind of a routine that she goes to, and that's a responsibility that she has actually put it upon herself.
That's wonderful. I'm sure the parents would want to know how a primary 3 child has got that routine ingrained. Yeah, let's go on. And I'm sure through this session, they will be able to glean more tips from you. Nancy has asked, how to grow and equip children to be able to think and solve problems? Well, Nancy, that's a fantastic question. Being a problem solver is actually a 21st century competency. And it's part of the learning dispositions that we teach our children, critical and creative thinking. So it's important that we involve the children with a variety of tasks at home, which will allow them to problem solve. Quite often, we realize that we want to shield our children from problems at home, and that doesn't help them to learn how to think for themselves or solve problems. It could be as simple as planning tomorrow's dinner menu. It could be planning a weekend activity even. And in planning for the dinner or weekend activity, they've got to think about a variety of issues. They have to ensure that every family member's needs, wants are taken care of, whatever dish that they want. Then they've got to establish that they have these items at home to ensure that dinner can be prepared. If they're planning a weekend activity, it's an excellent opportunity to teach them to ensure that there's wet weather planning, taking into consideration our current wet weather that's happening intermittently. So these are examples of how we can help our children to learn to think and problem solve for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, Madam Rao,
Yeah.
I think for me, one tip really would be for parents to be a little more to be a little more deliberate and to stop themselves from coming in to help the children solve problems. You know, so one of the things that I would actually encourage parents to do is to build in questioning. So if the child comes to you with a problem, instead of solving the problem for the child, ask the question, you know, how do you think I can help you? And make that uh, so you actually bring the problem back to the child. I am coming to help you, but instead of helping you without asking, I'll ask you, what do you think I can do to help you in that? And one example we a few years back when my son, I fetched my son to my mom's place, and in the afternoon he sent me a text, and he said, "Mom, I can't find my Chinese workbook." Okay, I said, okay. So where do you think it is? Did you bring it to school? And he said, yes, I brought it in my bag, but I can't find it now. So in the end, I said, okay, so how would you like me to help you? And then in the end, he texted back and said, could you please help me go to your car and check if the book is there? So he had a problem. He asked me for help. I asked in turn, what would you like me to do? And he problem solved it himself. So all he needed me to do is to help check that it's left up in a car. Yeah. So, you know, that's one tip of actually getting the question right so that your child becomes a problem solver and not just you. Yeah.
Wonderful. Madhumati has asked how to help my child love learning. Anjali, I'm sure you have a set of stories and you can share about your children.
Right. I think for younger children, when it comes to learning, and in order for children to really love learning, I think it has to be fun to start with. You know, so it can be your daily worksheets, whether it's math or English, but we can do something about it to make it fun so that the child feels engaged. So one of the things that I had shared with Madam Rao was that for my kid, when it came to math, and my girl is really not very interested in math, what we did was actually to help her. There's a question. What are some of the possible solutions? So we drew up possible solutions and we left it at the table and we said, okay, 1, 2, 3. Let's see who can get the right answer as fast as possible. So it becomes a fastest hand kind of a game. And that made her really quite interested, And if she couldn't be the fastest in the first question, let's go on to the second question. Yeah. And my other tip would be, in order for learning to be fun, it cannot be too burdensome. So if you know that your child tends to get too bogged down by too many questions, I'll say break down the questions. If there are 20 questions to be done, let's do 5. Okay, take a break. And then let's do the next 5. And you could also involve your children in thinking about how can we make this more fun. So as long as there's this fun element, learning would be something that they look forward to.
I love
Yeah.
that. Games in the classroom is something that many of our educators are always trying. because a child learns a lot of things through play. And when they have that sense of engagement in the lesson, they will begin to love the subject, love the learning. You've shared wonderful tips, and this applies even to mathematics parents. Many of our children nowadays don't seem to enjoy solving word problems, but it really starts with ensuring that there is no cognitive load within them. What do I mean? One of the reasons that they have a bit of trouble with word questions is the fact that they have not mastered the multiplication tables. They have not mastered a set of numerical calculations that are necessary. So if you can make it a game, for example, you can have a multiplication game like a 7 Up, where they learn the 7 times table, and every time they come to a number 7 or a multiple of 7, they've got to say 7 Up. And you will find, and I've found through a number of years, that many of our weaker learners in math enjoy that game, and they come up to you and say, "Can I challenge you to this game?" And so
Yes.
thank you, Angelia. We can go on to the next question now. This is very
Yes.
interesting. Diane has asked, what if the kid is strong minded and is adamant to make her own choices, which parents may not agree to? How to guide her without slighting her decisions? The fact that Diane, you understood that your child is strong minded, you have already noticed a set of characteristics. And being strong minded, strong willed, it means that the child is a thinker. He's obviously has his own wants, needs, and it is up to us to say, let us start the year. This is the year 2021. We've just gone through 2020, a rough year for most of us. What is one goal we may want to set for ourselves? So you want to ask them, what are the choices that you were not comfortable with? And you may want to lead the conversation to what the child is very strong-willed about. And you want to say, all right, what goal would we want to set? The conversation may not be easy, but you've got to get started with that conversation. And then let's see why the child is so fixed on what he wants to do. Perhaps if you give us an example of what he's fixed on doing, that would also help us to respond better. Anjali, did any of your children have a strong will?
Uh, Not exactly, but I thought that's an interesting question from Diane because I think just earlier this week, I've just had a glimpse of my child's FTGP book. And this is something that I would also encourage all the parents to go take a look because the FTGP booklet, usually at the start of the year, the teachers would be the ones also getting them to think about setting of goals, both the academic goals as well as non-academic goals. In which values would they want to set? What kind of values do they want to set themselves for this year? So I just had a glimpse of my daughter's FTGP, and in it, one of the goals that she set for herself this year is to get full marks for CA1.
I
Okay,
see.
and that came as a surprise. So do I say, oh my goodness, why do you put in? No, I thought that's actually an it's great opportunity, okay, for her to have a goal. And I will talk to her about, okay, if this is your goal, what are the things that we need to do in order for her to set out her goals. Is she going to get full marks for CA1 this year? Of course not. I think for all those parents who have a P2 child who has just transited to P3, you would know that the academic demands have gone up. In P1 and P2, they had really bite-sized assessments, but P3 is where they're going to face their first full assessment. So she's not going to get full marks, and this is a great opportunity for us to really talk about how do I face setback. Okay, and I incidentally also had Drosten asking how do we help children bounce back from a series of poor results. Yeah, and this is where we sit the child down, and we talk about, okay, that was the goal that you set for yourself, but it seems that it might be a longer term goal. All right, so if you should still like that to be your goal, let's see if we can come together and start setting our small steps, okay, so that we meet with small successes while we still have that long-term goal in mind. Yeah, so I think that's a great opportunity, to really help the
Yeah,
children, because talking about realistic goals, this is a concept that takes a lot of practice for children to understand what realistic means. Yeah, so instead of slighting them, go with them. Yeah, Madam Rao, what do you think?
I think that's a wonderful example that you've given. I want to just ask the parents, um, instead of bounce back, what do you think of the concept of bounce forward? Because we want every time is a failure, Angelia. We don't want the child to go back to where he was from. Every failure is an opportunity to learn and reflect upon how we can go better. So I would say we want to tell the child that indeed you failed. And remember, fail, the acronym could be first attempt in learning. And now that you've
Yeah,
failed, how do you now bounce forward from that?
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Um,
Yes.
Parents continue to really comment and question us on Facebook, and there's a there's a comment from a parent asking, well, it's a question asked about how to get his child to love reading, and other parents have chimed in with tips. Thank you, parents. For example, one of the parents said, start by reading to him. I think that's absolutely true. We must role model what we want our children to do. When our children when our children see us with a book, they pick up that book, they mimic us. They may not be able to read yet, but they will begin to pick it up. And that's how I
Yeah.
picked up my books. And a lot of my teachers tell me that their children are readers because they make it a routine to read to their children at bedtime. What about you, Angela? What suggestions do
Yes.
you have for our parents?
Yeah. Madam, I thought the key thing that you talked about is really about modeling, and I think modeling is key. I mean, even in my family, with my son and my daughter, my son is an avid reader. He's voracious in his reading. But my girl, she finds reading a chore. Yeah. So, reading to them is a habit that we have formed since they started young. So, as far as possible, read to the child. If the child finds reading a chore but still likes listening to the stories, and then you can really, get them into thinking about the stories and getting them interested, so that they come to you again and say, Mom, can you read this story? I want to know what's going to happen next. I start with that first. So it's the same as goal setting. We are helping our kids goal set. In terms of getting our kids to love reading, we are also doing some goal setting. In the long term, we want them to be able to love reading, but at this point in time, if they don't really have any interest in books, let's up the fun level. Let's read together. Let's read as a family. And have him or her read to a younger child. Yeah, I found that some kids
Lovely.
really love to be the teacher in the classroom, or yeah, and have the older child take a simpler book and read to the younger child. Yeah, that's also the other way that you can actually use to develop the love for reading.
Absolutely. And in schools, we have this kids read program where our primary threes read to our primary ones, and they love it. They
Lovely.
love the leadership
Thank you.
opportunity.
Yes,
I want to share another tip, parents, before we go on. I had a parent who shared
sure.
with me that she was very worried about her child who couldn't read. And then one day, her child came with her with a whole lot of questions on this computer game that he was playing called Roblox. I'm sure many of you
Right.
know that particular game. And she was surprised about the vocabulary that the child could use in relation to that game. And then she began to track back
Yeah.
and she says, are you sure you can read all of this? And it was true. So one learning for this parent was that let's start from what the child is interested in, get him things that he likes to read, get him things that he's interested in, and he will automatically start finding out. Our kids nowadays are a curious bunch of children. They want to know more. It's just that sometimes they're looking at things that they don't have personal interest in. And
Yes.
perhaps you could try that, parents.
Yeah. That's right.
We have we have Yokping Angelia asking, my
Yes.
child wants to achieve something that I think is quite tough for her.
Tough.
She asked me to
Yes.
help her achieve that. Should I deny? or encourage her to go for it. Go for it, Yok Ping. You must. You must.
Yes.
It's like riding a bicycle, parents. For our precious children, at the first instance, we didn't want them to fall, did we? We were right there with their helmets, with their arm guards, with their training wheels, and even with the training wheels, our hand was holding on to the bicycle. But we learned to let go when the child gained confidence. The child, because he has set or she has set a goal for herself, it is so important that we, like Angelia mentioned, she says, let's break down that goal. We may think it's tough, and it's probably tough, but if you can break it down, you're also teaching the child how to break any problem that the child is going to face and then work at it step by step. And if she doesn't succeed, that's a fantastic learning opportunity for you as well as
Yeah.
the child, that not everything we set our mind to is going to happen. We are bound to
Yeah.
fail, but we're going to fail forward. We're going to learn from it. We're going to come out stronger for that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, uh, most definitely. I think, Madam Rao, one of the things that parents should have is always have a check in and a check back with the children. They may have set a goal for themselves. Always give the child an opportunity. So, where do we go from here? Do we want to
I love it.
continue, or would you like to think about doing something a little less taxing? So always check back so that the children don't also feel the burden, like I've already set myself on this path and there's no going back and there's no retreating to something else. Yeah, so always make sure that you check in with the child, and have the child lead the way, tell you, no, that I still want to go, okay, but I might need you to help me with this, or yes, I think this is a little bit too tough. Maybe can we just, pedal back 2 to 3 steps, and that's all right, not an issue at all. And we continue moving forward. Yeah.
Great suggestions. Parents, the questions are coming in fast and furious. We have
Yes.
a question here which says, Fred has asked, what are some tips that you can share towards helping parents develop not just independent learners, but lifelong learners as well? Lovely, lovely question, parents. We've got a bunch of wonderful parents participating in our discussion today, Angelia.
Yes.
Independent learning versus lifelong learning.
Yeah.
Lifelong learning happens when we begin to enjoy learning for the sake of it. And that will happen when we set ourselves routines to say, well, this is what we do in a student's life. There are subjects that we may not enjoy, but we do it because there is an end goal of academic achievement. At the same time,
Yes.
you will find that your child has certain subjects that they love. For example, my favorite subject was literature. I loved my literature teacher. I loved all my literature lessons. I loved my drama lessons. Perhaps given a choice, I would have gone into the art side, but nonetheless. So find out, parents, what is the child's interest, and if you can help them along their interests, they will become lifelong learners, whether it is learning how to swim, being a badminton player, um, interested in any sort of game, sports, or any subject. Angelia, any
Yeah.
suggestions for our parents?
I'm going to set a challenge for parents, actually, because like what Madam Rao said, right? Be the model. So if you'd like your children to be lifelong learners, maybe the first question that you should ask yourself is, are you a lifelong learner yourself? Because if you, have you, during the COVID period, picked up a new skill, struggled with it? Yeah,
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
baking. Yes, and through that, you could actually model what lifelong learning is. So I've got a lot of my colleagues and friends who have picked up new skills, sewing, for example. Yeah, I will not go into sewing because that's not my interest. But a few years ago, I picked up drumming, because I thought that
Uh-huh.
would be a good way, to show the children, and to also understand myself, how is it like to be picking up a skill when you really know very little about it. What are some of the struggles? So I will be going for my weekly drumming lessons, and I did
Mm-hmm.
my drumming lessons for about 3 years. And I topped it up with a performance with my kids and my husband. It was nerve-wracking because most of the dramas were children. I think I was the only adult learner in there. But I thought, that was a great example of lifelong learning. So if you could be the model about being a lifelong learner, I think your child, is set on a good path to be a lifelong learner, just like you.
Lovely, lovely. Angela, I think the next question is for you to take. What do you say? How do we improve the child's ability to listen to parents' advice?
Right. I think it's a two. I think it's a two-way interaction. So before we think about how we can improve the child's ability to listen to us, perhaps I would like to take a 360-degree spin on it. How do we improve our ability to listen to our children's voice? Yeah,
Mm,
so it actually takes two, I feel. So as far as
interesting.
possible, if you are able to actually show that you do have an open mind, that you are open to listening to what the children have to say, and have the children negotiate certain boundaries, then the next time round when you say something, I think it will actually improve the child's ability to say, I know that my mom is saying something that I might not like, but I also do know that she's open for discussion and negotiation. So I think it is a give and take, in order to improve that. And if you can actually show that you are also listening to your children's advice, if they say, Mom, for this week, I really would not want to do this. Shall we do this instead? And you say, okay, yes, why not? Yeah, and you're opening up that communication channel, and having the children feel that, yes, I am being listened to. Yeah, so they would be a little bit more open the next time round when you come in with a suggestion or you come in with something that you would like them to try out. Yeah. What do you think, Madam Ro?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, parents, the children are listening. The children are listening. They're just putting on a front. They're just making it tough for you. No, but
Yeah.
really, when we talk to the children in school, they love you. They
Yes.
are just pushing the boundaries. They're just pushing the boundaries. They're just trying to see what buttons to push on you. And so that's where your parenting skill, your ability to stay firm with your values, that's important. You need to ensure that you have a set of family values that you say, in our family, this is what we do. It could be simple things like the use of bad language.
Mm,
We don't do it. And child, that's not what we taught you. That's not how we respect our peers or anybody significant or anyone actually. So if we can front load them, we can start telling them what is it that we value. I think that would be really useful for our children. And when they
yes.
are in need, like Angelia said, listen to them. The first thing that we would do, and I've had to train myself with all my nephews and nieces, what happened? We jump to their rescue. No, let's listen. Don't ask, why did you do this? I would suggest say, what happened? How did it
Yes.
happen? Tell me more.
Yes.
Just these three things will allow you to elicit a little bit more information that your child actually didn't tell you. But when you've gotten that information, the likelihood of you understanding that situation would be greater. Also, you would have calmed down. Talk to your child when you are calm. That helps. Even in
Yes.
schools, that's what we do. We tell all of us. I mean, we're human. We do get upset over things when rules are broken. So calm down. You can actually tell your child, sit down there while I think through what you just shared with me, then I'll come back to you. That would help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely. Yeah.
so, Zelina has asked, for primary one students, what kind of goals should I set for my child since there is no test or exams? Hmm. What kind of goals? Happy goals, happy goals, happy goals such as enjoying learning,
Yes.
enjoying singing, enjoying school, enjoying being able to confidently speak to you, share with you what's happened in school.
Yes.
share what new learning she has gained for the year, talk about the friends, the experiences. All of us try to, despite COVID, give them very interesting experiences in school. It could be a speech and drama experience, it could be a PE lesson or a PAL lesson. Allow them to share with you. Then all schools will give you formative assessments, with learning outcomes, and will allow you to see where your child is on the continuum of growth, and establish those goals systematically, progressively, and say, all right, it could even be simple things like not being able to bounce a ball. So establish certain goals. If your child can count to 10, go on to 20, go on to 30, simple additions. So uh, take a look at what the child is learning and progressively lead the child to mastery. That would be one goal I would suggest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yes, Madam.
Angelique?
Yeah, I think for me, it also depends on what are the areas that you think your child needs a little bit more. For example, for my girl, she is naturally very introverted and shy. So from P1 onwards, we'll be asking her about, okay, so how many people have you spoken with today? And what are their
Mm-hmm.
names? What do they like? Do they like something you like? So this is something that we have already started at P1 because we do know that by herself, she tends not to initiate conversation. She tends to be very shy and introverted. So that carried all the way on till P3 this year. She's in a new class. So when I pick her up from school, the first thing she said is, "Mommy, I know the girl behind me. Her name is Celine." Yeah, and because again, it becomes automatic. That's what my mom wants really to know about, whether am I making friends, am I talking to other people, am I socializing. Yeah, so the kind of P1 goals that you would want to set for a child might depend on some of the areas that you feel that your child needs a little bit more to work towards. Yeah.
Yep. Fred has asked Angelia, some
Ah,
parents may
yes.
view independent learning as doing more assessment books because they are unsure of how to do so.
Right.
All right,
Okay.
let's take a moment to understand. They may view independent
Yes.
learning as doing more assessment books. All right. Um, I think you've mentioned it, and I would like to say that worksheets don't grow your brain, worksheets don't grow your dendrites or neurons. So,
No.
what does grow? A sense of wonder. We want to help our children. If we want to talk about independent learning, let's help them be involved in something that they are interested in, or something that you are interested in. It could have been the supermoon, it could be the current conservation movement, it could be the environmental changes that are happening all around the world. Bring the conversation to the dining table, bring the conversations on weekend trips. What we want is our children to explore beyond the books. We want them to
Yes.
explore the world. We want them to be critical thinkers about what's happening. Take them to the hawker center. Ask them, what do you see? What do you think is happening? All of this builds within us, our children, positive attitudes towards learning, that there is always learning happening if we have an eye for it, and if we want to learn from our experiences.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Shall we go on?
Go on
We
to the next
have
question. Yes.
Nemaline is asking, my son
Namalin.
feels bad when he makes mistakes with his work and sometimes cries. I always explain to him that it's normal to make mistakes, or how do I help him to accept making mistakes? What do you suggest, Angela? What do you think?
Um, yeah, I think first and foremost, it will really be getting the child to really tell you, what is it that he's feeling inside, his thoughts and emotions when he makes mistakes. Is it because of a fear that when he makes mistakes,
Mm,
there might be consequences? Yeah, so it's really
mm,
about talking him through to really find out because I think sometimes the fear is an externalized fear, but sometimes for our children, the fear could be an internalized fear. So there's actually nothing in the external environment that's causing the anxiety, but it's the child's own personality streak. For example, someone who's a perfectionist and feels that getting something wrong is really something that he didn't want to, and once that comes through, it actually sort of like evokes a very strong emotion. So it's really about getting the child to acknowledge those feelings. So it's for Nemelin to acknowledge those feelings and telling him that this is something that we might have to work together, because as we go on to learn more and more things, yeah, there will be opportunities for us to actually make mistakes, and this is how we will want to work together with you to help to minimize those feelings of fears. Yeah, so you can say, oh, this is something that I did not do well, and let's ask mommy to let me know what the correct answer is. If there's a need for the child to redo that piece of work, uh, feel free to. So I think it's really about getting to find out more about the underlying causes for that upsetting emotions that's coming in. And I think what we are dealing with is actually how do we help him manage those emotions, because those emotions are real. And you
Yep.
can't just ask the child to stop
Agree.
crying. Yes, that's right.
Agree.
So it will really take time to get to understand what are some of these thoughts that's making him so upset, and we have to slowly change those thoughts for him to slowly accept that there may be mistakes. I'm one of the suggestions that I may have for Nemelin is, after he has done his work, give him an opportunity to self-check. Or you can tell
Mm.
him, well, there's about one or two of these, and tell him, not mark him down, but tell him, maybe for question 7, you should take a look at it again. Yeah, and find other ways to help him manage those emotions. Yeah, Madam Rao.
Absolutely. And I think, Nemelin, sorry, I think that sports is a wonderful way, or a game is a wonderful way
Yes.
for a child to learn that there's always a winner. Well, there is a winner and a loser, and in terms of making mistakes, there's something to learn. In a board game, let's say Monopoly, the winner is the one who has the most properties or the most money. If
Yes.
you want to win, what are the things that you want? You want to strategize. So, like Angelia mentioned, you want to ensure that the child knows where he has made the mistake, and instead of marking it for him, ask him to find out where he's gone wrong, and that would help to grow him. The second the second concept I'd like to share with parents is this idea of a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. If a child continually feels bad about making mistakes with his work, he may want everything to be perfect, and you want to unpack that. What is this idea of perfection? You want to be able to tell him that you haven't mastered it yet. If you can put yet into his psyche, his mindset, his vocabulary, then he'll be able to say, well, I've made a mistake. I'm going to get it right the next time. And I'm going to continually improve. So I would say, Angelia, this idea of I haven't mastered it yet is something that we
Yes.
can teach our children. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
So let's go on. Ivan
Yes.
has asked, how do I encourage a child who loses interest quickly once things get more complicated and harder to understand or master? Oh, I think I just touched on that. It's really about having a growth mindset, and you want to just Angela, feel free to add on once I've
Sure.
responded. If a child quickly gives up, it could be because he likes to set himself up for success.
Yeah.
And anything that doesn't set him to success, he wants to give it up because he thinks that he will be praised. He will be praised if he's done well, if he's succeeded. He's gotten full marks even. And the minute he does not win or get high marks, perhaps the responses that we give them are something that has gone into his mindset to say that I don't think mom or dad would like it that I have not done well for this particular activity. So what we
Yeah.
want to ensure that we do is we we don't provide person praise. We don't say, well done. We don't say, hey, you're smart, Angelia, or you're smart, Madam
Yes.
Rao. You'd say, that was good effort. That was great effort. You spent a lot of time on this activity, and I like the focus and concentration you put in. So we call this process praise. And when a child gets process praise, he begins to understand what he did right. And when he does that, that's important for him to then repeat this the next time. And that becomes a routine for the child that if he wants to be successful, he needs to spend some time, he needs to ensure there is some focus and concentration, and perhaps even some sacrifice on something that he doesn't like to do so that he can succeed in a task. Angelia, would you
Yeah.
want to add on any?
Yeah, I mean, but perhaps just one more suggestion would be always to give the child a helpline. That means if
Ah,
things get complicated, yes, you always have a helpline. So if the giving up is a behavior that you feel, instead of giving up, why don't you, when you meet something that's difficult to do, ask me along and make yourself available. And in that way, you could actually help manage, this giving up habit, and help him say that, if I have got something that I find is difficult, oh, I can get my mom, and my mom will help me master this. Yeah, so that's probably another way that the parents can try. Yeah.
thank you, Angelia. So Kenneth has asked a very interesting question. Any
Wow.
tips on how, I know, right? Any tips on
Yes.
how to create a safe environment for a child to fail fast, fail early, and fail forward?
Wow. Mm.
Great question, Kenneth. Um, Important concepts. It's about building resilience and perseverance in our children, ensuring that as they grow through our hands, we give them opportunities to fail, and then giving them the opportunity to reflect, making time to sit with them and say what went well, what didn't go well. It could be something as simple as a Lego construction toy. Without a model, they've got to build something and they're not able to get something. It could be a jigsaw puzzle, and they're not able to complete it. They get your help. It could also be something like design thinking. All schools have applied learning programs or learning for life programs. And there's a frame called design thinking where we have simple things like feel, imagine, do, and share. So we want the child to think through a problem, quickly prototype it, and if it's not working, to change the direction. That's an example of fail early. You don't want the child to give you a perfect piece of work. You want them to do drafts. So in English compositions, for example, we don't mark supposedly the final composition. We mark them at draft levels. We want the child to know that this is a work in progress, and any amendments that they want to make, they have opportunities to make it. Draft 1, draft 2, draft 3, and they know the success criteria, and then they submit the work that they are proud of. Angela, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah. I find this question actually quite hard to answer, because in order to create a safe environment, I think sometimes we have to follow the child's readiness. So,
Mm,
I'm just thinking about learning how to swim, for example. And
mm,
I remember that for my daughter, we actually got her to her swim lessons. That's part of her nursery program. She went for 2 lessons and she said, I didn't want to go in anymore. Yeah, so she didn't feel safe. And at that point in
oh
time, I
dear.
think we actually, yeah, and we actually asked her, okay, if this is not something that you want to do now, maybe tell us when you are ready. Yeah, and we
Mm-hmm,
actually stopped the swimming for her till she was about K2, and she
mm-hmm.
and she was psyching herself up to say, when I hit my 6th birthday, that's when I will start learning swimming. Yeah, so the child has to feel safe. So the safe environment might be a construct that may differ the parents may feel that it's a safe environment, but from the child's point of view, that's something that we really have to take note of to ensure that, whatever you think is safe for the child as well. And once the child feels safe, the failing would be something that the child would take it in his or her stride, because it's safe for me to try out, it's safe for me to fail. There's less of the emotions or the negative thoughts that I need to manage. Yeah.
I'm particularly impressed that your child could actually talk to you and say, "This is when I want to do it." So there is this still
Yes.
there is this aspect of being very comfortable in who she is, and she knows that she
Yes.
has unconditional love from the mom. I think that
Right.
is important for all our parents also.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh dear, Claren has
Yes.
asked this. My girl had a few nightmares recently. She mentioned that
Yeah.
she was worried about her Chinese language. And I guess to add on, how do we help our child manage stress? I think that's a great question, Claren. And the fact that you recognized some of the symptoms of your child's stress is commendable. And quite often we do miss some of these signs of stress. So before we go into how we can talk about it, parents, some of the signs of stress that we notice in our children, primary school, would be nightmares. They come into the sick bay with stomach aches or headaches, and
Yes.
when we talk to them a little bit more, they say, well, they haven't done a homework, or they have a subject that they may have stress about. So we notice that these are some symptoms. We also notice that they are tired. They may make excuses to miss school. They may suddenly become withdrawn. So it's important, first of all, that you recognize these symptoms. And what can we do? Our teachers are always on the lookout for these. Talk to your child's teacher. It's important that we understand where the stress is coming from. Sometimes it's an internal stress. Sometimes it's because the child wants to do well. The child may really want to achieve the goals that you've set for her, or the goals she's set for herself. So it's important, first of all, we we want to acknowledge that this stress is real. She's showing the symptoms. And then we work with the teachers in our school to say what's happening. Then the teacher can also triangulate her findings with yours, and together we come up to a solution for the child. It could be simple things. It could be simple things, not that she's having trouble with let me try Angelia things here,
Yes.
the spelling.
Yeah. Things. Yeah.
So
That's right.
she may have,
Yes.
yeah, she have problems with the number of words at that particular level. So we work with the teacher to say, let's reduce the number of words as a start to reduce the stress. As she experiences mastery, her stress would be reduced. Not always
Yes.
as simple as that, but I want to share with you another story that happened recently in my school, where a child had school refusal. And she's a lovely child, I mean, all our children are lovely. And she's always had full attendance. So when she had school refusal, we had to understand what was happening. And what we found out was there was a lot of stress at home. And this primary five child was very fearful of coming to school, because she felt that if she wasn't there, something would happen. One of the parents could possibly leave. She wanted to be the person to keep the family together. Have you experienced such things, Angelia?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think stress is really a function of two things, the demands that's being placed on us, and our ability to meet those demands. Yeah, so when we
Mm.
when we find that there's stress, really connecting with the child's teachers is one of the best things to do, so that we can better understand, are there certain external demands that's placed on my child, that my child is having difficulties, meeting. And then we think about what else can we do to help boost the child's ability to meet these stresses. Yeah, so like what Madam Rao says, the stress can come from outside, it can also come from within. So if you have already started to pick out certain signs of stress, just make sure you slow down. Okay, make sure that the home is a relaxed home atmosphere, and you can find a bit of time to talk to your child. About, yes, I noticed that you couldn't sleep very well last night. Is something on your mind? Again, is there something, or how is it that mommy can come in to help you with? Yeah, so help the children articulate their thoughts and their feelings, and I think that's one way that we can better understand, what is really the underlying reasons for the child's emotions. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well,
Yes.
Kenneth and Regina seem to have a similar question. Regina has
Yes.
asked, my son's focus level is quite short, even though he does not have an issue absorbing his lessons. However, I'm quite concerned that he may not have enough time to complete his work. And a similar question is, it takes my girl very long to do her revision. It can really take ages and end up having to do until very late. How should I
Right.
manage this? A good question.
Mm.
I think it's important that as even as we want to take our student, even as we guide our students to take charge of their learning and keep track of their assignments and schedule, let's start with the homework. We know homework is an opportunity for our children to deepen their learning. So start with that before we go into revision. How long does it take for a child to do homework? If you find that your child is taking more time than you think should be taken, again, have a chat with a form teacher. Establish and understand what's happening in school. What's the speed of work at, at school, and how fast does he complete the work at home? It could be that at home he may have certain distractions. So we want to minimize, first of all, we want to understand and then minimize some of the distractions he may face. It could be he wants to play with his siblings. It could be a gadget that he has. And, our children, especially if they're doing online work, they know how to switch between tabs. So you think that they're
Yes.
doing work, but they're actually not. So
Not. Yes.
let's understand, let us find out, and then we can work with our child.
Yes. Yeah, Madam Rao
So
is
yeah,
absolutely right. Yes. Oh, yeah. I think it's absolutely. We have to find partners, and the class teachers are usually one of the best sources of information. So if there's something that you are noticing about your child, either taking very long to do work, or that he doesn't seem to be having a lot of focus and ends up not doing or not completing the homework, I'd have a chat with the class teachers to find out a little bit more to see whether or not is this behavior consistent across situations, or that is happening only at home, but it's a different situation in
absolutely,
school. Yeah.
absolutely. So, well, participants, thank you so much for being a part of this discussion. We are almost at the end. Perhaps I'll ask Angelia to share any top tip she has as a takeaway.
Right. I think one of the things that I hope that parents can take back, it's really to remember that the parenting journey is not a lone journey, and you could actually be like your what we want the children to do, be able to look at a problem, seek help, and be able to actually extend your reach to the teachers, to your spouse, to the grandparents. Have someone who has the same level of interest in your child as you, and have them partner with you in this journey together, because they would be able to help you problem solve, help you look at things in a different perspective. They may come in
Yeah,
to actually be one of the people to help talk to the child, for example. And I think that's really how we would like parents to take away with. Like what Madam Rao says, there's many resources actually on the web to answer some of your questions, and also feel free to really reach out and engage the schools whenever you've got any questions about the well-being of your child.
yes, absolutely. Well, we thank all of you for being such wonderful participants, asking questions on how we can help our children be the best they can be, and for so generously sharing tips on how we can help our children grow up well and flourish in life, being able to be good and feel good. I hope we've helped you to understand how you can better support your child in his or her independent learning, as well as setting and achieving goals. But in case we didn't answer your question, please be reassured that teachers and schools will work together with you to help your children become independent learners who are able to set and work towards their own goals and be resilient in the face of challenges. I must stress that your support is important to your child's development, and do manage your own expectations to avoid placing unnecessary stress on our children. There are many readily available MOE resources such as the Guidelines for School Home Partnership and Parent Kids on Starting School Right, as well as Independent Learning. Do follow MOEs at Parenting with MOE SG Instagram account to receive tips on how you can further support your children in their education journey. Thank you so very much for joining us. I just want to say, remember, our children act older, they have limited social and world exposure, they want to be accepted. Let's love them, love them, love them. We wish, on behalf of Angelia, we wish everyone well for the new year. And since the Lunar New Year is coming up, happy Chinese New Year to our Chinese participants. Thank you so very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good evening.